Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Gentlemen, Dominic Rolling Solo here today, and I have got a packed episode for you on how to train for life's toughest moments. We're going to be going into those situations in your life where you lose your power, right? Those places where you don't show up as powerfully or resourcefully as you want. We're going to talk about the consequences in your life of showing up that way and how if you don't train differently, it's going to continue to be that way in those most difficult moments. And then I'm going to leave you with a few techniques on how to train differently so you can show up in integrity, in power during your life's toughest moments. Now, this is coming on the heels of a workshop I ran last night for 50 men called Unshakable. Building your mental and emotional capacity to handle anything. If you were one of those 50 guys, we're going to be covering a lot of the same stuff today, but I encourage you not to skip this episode because repetition creates new awareness, new wisdom, new learning. You're going to pick up something today that you didn't last night. And I've got a new technique for you that I didn't talk about last night that I know you'll find very helpful at the end of today's episode. So, before we get to the topic at hand today, I want to make an exciting announcement that has been months in the making. The doors to the Great Man Digital Mastermind are now officially open. Guys, I can't tell you how proud I am of the community, of you, of all of us who have worked to bring it to this point. For the past 4 or 5 months, we've been running a series of free programs. We've launched the Facebook group. You guys have been showing up in this incredibly supportive way, doing the inner work, showing up for one another, and now it's time to take it to the next level. For those of you guys who are interested in investing in your great man within, in deciding to formalize your commitment to stop drifting, to stop lone wolfing your personal development, lone wolfing your life, to have a system of accountability so you can stop those false starts, and finally execute and push the ball across the goal line in those areas where you've been stopped, this is your community. Every month, we're going to have workshops that I'm leading to break you through some of those biggest obstacles in your life so you can find your purpose, find meaning, fulfillment, gain momentum in your life, and driving your connections deeper with other guys. I'm going to go at the end of this episode into further detail about some of this stuff, but there's a link in the show notes that'll have all the detail of what's included in the mastermind, all the great training modules I've created for you guys. This mastermind is so fucking loaded, especially for what the investment is at the early stages here that's required of you. To me and to the guys that I've really consulted around this, it's a no-brainer. If you are someone who's ready to go deeper in this community and go deeper with becoming your best self, I invite you to take a good hard look at this. And we have our first 2-hour kickoff session with the community coming up on Friday, February the 12th. You are not going to want to miss that. It's on a Friday night, and we're in the COVID era. So what the hell else are you doing on Friday night? You're not doing anything. So this is a way to spend your Friday night wisely. And like I said, I'll come back at the end of today's episode and talk more about it. All right, let's talk about how to train for your life's toughest moments. Now, we're coming in on the tail end of this. I'm recording this on Thursday, January the 28th. This is day 28 of the 31-day Mentally Tougher Man Challenge that we kicked off on January 1st of this year. If you weren't a part of the program, every day I've been emailing out or texting out a challenge for men to practice either meditation, breath work, journaling, cold showers, 100 push-ups, 200 push-ups, so that every single day you have a practice going to the edge of your comfort levels, whether it's physically your comfort level, emotionally, spiritually your comfort levels. Why do we do this, guys? We do this. We train in discomfort intentionally, because life is constantly throwing you situations that you're uncomfortable with, that you have no say over. And instead of collapsing, or withdrawing, or throwing your hands up in the air and complaining about it, you can meet life's challenges with power and integrity. And you can turn life into one big game, right? So that's why we do these training sessions, right? Why is it important to train to build your mental and emotional capacity for those situations? Because life is always going to be throwing at you what you don't want. So let's take this a step further. What are the situations in your life that cause you to lose your power? Think about that for a second. What are the situations in your life that cause you to lose your power? And if you're going to be honest in answering this question, the truth should be more than you can fucking count. Right? There are more situations in your life than you can fucking count that cause you to lose your power. You don't believe me? Well, let's dig into some of this stuff, okay? How about spending time with your in-laws? Or how about spending time with your parents? I think it was Ram Dass who said, if you think you're enlightened, go spend time with your family. They know the things that can just trigger you in a moment's notice. How about hanging out with your kids? You love them, but my God, they know how to bring you to your knees, right? How about spending time with your romantic partner? They sure know how to twist the knife, don't they? What about being criticized, right? What about being ignored? I ran a poll on my Instagram this week. What is worse for you, being criticized or being ignored? 2/3 of people said being ignored, right? Causing you to lose your power. Maybe you get too emotional. Maybe you start to shut down. Maybe that inner critic shows up and you start to kill yourself internally. What about being misunderstood? Or if someone disrespects you? I'm going to keep going with this stuff. How about situations where you lose your power when you're confronted with someone who has different politics than you? Here in the United States, this last 6 months with the presidential election, my God, I've seen a lot of really respectable people show up at their absolute worst. I certainly know I didn't show up my best many times over the past 6 months. Some of you guys have even called me on that, right? How about when you have too much on your plate? You're spinning too many plates, you're overwhelmed, right? Like the weight of the world's on your shoulders, and then someone comes in and asks one more thing of you and you snap or you shut down? And how about this, guys? How about when you've had your masculinity challenged? Someone calls you a pussy or insinuates it, asks you, like, are you going to be a man, or tells you to man up? Right? How many times have you lost your power in those situations? How about when you performed poorly in bed? Right? You can't get it up, or you lose it too quickly, right? These kinds of things. Or you didn't satisfy your partner. Maybe you feel a sense of shame. It's easy to lose your power in those situations and in those moments. Here is an example that I gave last night during the workshop. Over the course of my dating life, when I would trigger the woman that I was dating, maybe I would do something to upset her or trigger her, when she would bring her emotions to me, I felt disempowered. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. So I just took it. I ate the shit sandwiches, even when part of it was fair, but part of it was, in some cases, way over the top and unfair. I got kitchen sinked, but I took all of it. I ate the shit sandwich because I didn't know how to stand up for myself, guys. I didn't have a voice. And what ended up happening? I started to feel weak in those situations, and I hated how I felt. And I started to resent her because of it. She didn't know that, right? She thought that I was there listening and being compassionate and, hearing her out and being emotionally sensitive. All the while in my head, I was killing her and myself, right? And being resentful. And that would create this wall between me and her for intimacy that she could never get between the two. She didn't know that. And then eventually I would look to leave that situation, that relationship. I would eject so I could go somewhere else, start over with a clean slate where I felt more powerful, until I would do that pattern all over again. What were the consequences of that pattern in my life? I never got close to a woman. I never let her get close to me. I never stood up for myself in those situations. And I just kept repeating this exhaustive cycle of eating the shit sandwiches, ejecting from the relationship, and then doing it all over again. I did that for decades, guys. It's only been over the last few years where I really recognized how I was relinquishing my power in those situations. What are the consequences of you relinquishing your power in life's toughest moments? And now I'm using the word relinquish versus losing your power. You can never lose your power, really. It's not stripped from you. It doesn't go away. You relinquish it. It is your choice. It was my choice to relinquish my power in those situations. That's the bad news, guys. This is all your fault. Right? Like when you lose your shit on the highway because you're like racing in to try and get somewhere that you're late to, and then traffic hits or someone cuts you off and you go road raging or you snap, that's your fault. That's the bad news. The good news is because it was your fault all along, that you have the power within you to take back the control. But you got to train differently. I learned how to train differently, and the training strategies I'm going to give you have revolutionized my ability to handle life's toughest moments. I'm currently dating a woman who a few months ago, we got into something together. I did something that upset her, triggered her, and she brought her hurt to me, a lot of which was justified, and a lot of which went over the top. Right? There was like some character stuff that she was bringing to me, like character assassination stuff that was not only not fair, I wasn't going to stand for it. And so I was able to take a deep breath in that moment and say to her, baby, I feel you're hurt. I know I've done stuff to upset you. Let's talk through that. But this stuff that you just said is over the line, and I won't stand for it. It's not true. This is your wound speaking. And if we're going to go down this path, we're not going to have this conversation right now. Am I clear? And in that moment, she was like, boom, whoa. Not only did we transition, guys, to another kind of conversation, just a few days ago, when we were reflecting on that conversation, she said to me, Dominic, that was so fucking hot when you did that. And I was like, really? What was so hot about that to you? She's like, you put me in my place because I needed to be. I was over the line. But you did so without bringing rage at me, right? You did so like compassionately but firmly. So guys, think about this, the revolutionary difference in this new behavior. Instead of in years past where I would eat the shit sandwich, feel weak, eject, no intimacy, now I'm showing up in a way where she feels my sturdiness, my stability, my power, and it's a turn on for her, and we've gotten closer intimately. Holy shit. Life-changing. Can you imagine taking these situations where you relinquish your power and then turning them into new sources of strength for you? Your entire life will change, guys, but you got to train differently. Before we get into the training strategies around that, I need to take you one step deeper on what are the consequences in your life of relinquishing your power, right? If your mom says that thing to you and you get triggered, what are the consequences of you continuing to show up that way? What are the consequences of you continuing to get pissed off at your boss when they ask you to do something? I tend to see the polar spectrum, the polarity spectrum of men's behaviors in these situations where you lose your power in two different categories. On one end of the spectrum, when a man relinquishes his power, one of his strategies is he shuts down, right? There's a complete shutdown. I was kind of like the shutdown guy, right? She was bringing her emotions to me. She was getting upset. Instead of getting fired up, I could feel the anger and the energy boiling up inside of me, but I was afraid to express it. Right? I was afraid to explode or erupt and say the thing that was going to be unsayable, like I couldn't bring it back, right? So I would stuff that down. I would shut down. I would disengage. The other end of the spectrum where I see guys going is they explode, right? So you erupt. Sometimes you get a hair trigger and you just explode, erupt. That's like your pattern. Other times you eat so many shit sandwiches and then final straw hits and then you erupt. The two ends of the spectrum, shutting down or exploding. Now, the consequences over time of continuing to shut down, which could be a disengagement or, avoidance, these kinds of things, the consequence of that over time is exhaustion. Do you realize how exhausting it is over time to continue to stuff those emotions down? It requires an extraordinary amount of your life force, guys, to keep that stuff down, to suppress, to avoid, to distract, to numb out. That will kill your life force over time. I know you see that. And you also start to feel weak and insecure and like you're not showing up as the best version of yourself. Clearly, that's exhausting. The other end of the extreme, the erupting, the exploding, over time, the consequence of that is shame. When you say the thing that you can't take back, when you do the thing that you didn't want to do, it leads to feelings of shame. And if you have that shame accumulate long enough over time, then that's your identity. You start to become and start to feel like I am a bad person, or I am a weak person, or I am a volatile person. Those things, guys, the exhaustion and the shame are insidious evils that will run your life if you don't start to train differently in life's toughest moments. Okay? And that's what we talked about all last night. So guys, I've chosen to train differently. I train in self-imposed discomfort. So when the world thrusts this discomfort upon me, which it always does, I can look at it and say with a smile, let's fucking dance. Now, a lot of the training strategies that I offered up during the Mentally Tougher Man Challenge, like meditation, breath work, journaling, push-ups, these were all to bring a heightened level of awareness on a day-to-day basis of these uncomfortable situations so that when life throws something like a curveball at you that you weren't expecting, you've been training so regularly that you know how to create a pause and to create that moment where you do things differently. The cold shower is a perfect training strategy, guys, for when that icy cold blast hits your body and your monkey mind says, eject, get the hell out of here. You want to react to it, but instead you take a breath. You settle yourself in, you ground your feet, and even though it never gets completely comfortable, it gets easier. It doesn't get easy, but it gets easier. And you then have the choice versus just triggering response, stimulus response, right? Those are great training tools that we've done throughout the Mentally Tougher Man Challenge. But here are some new training strategies. 2 I offered up last night, and a third one that is going to be something I didn't share last night. Training strategy number 1 to meet life's toughest moments differently is a mindset shift. And the mindset shift is moving from an external to an internal locus of control. Guys, I used to be a control freak. I tried to control all of the external environmental factors so that I could feel a certain way on the inside. We're always chasing feelings on the inside, right? Everything we do, every behavior that we take, every action that we take, every behavior that we have, every goal that we set is because we want to feel a certain way on the inside. We hang out with people because we want to feel a certain way on the inside. We take the job, we listen to the podcasts. Everything we do is because we want to feel a certain way on the inside. Over time, you can delude yourself into the fact that if you can control enough external variables, that you can always feel the way you want on the inside, when the reality is there are an ungodly amount of external variables that you will never be able to control. Like you have like a nano, a micro bit of influence over external factors compared to all of the world's things that are going to come your way that you have no say over. Traffic, weather, global pandemics, presidential elections, like you name it. And so the folly in trying to control those external factors is you're going to be led to a lifetime of disappointment. So when you shift to an internal locus of control, saying, I'm only going to concern myself with how I feel on the inside, what thoughts I allow myself to indulge in on the inside, do you become a mentally and emotionally tougher man? Here are some of the key distinguishing factors between external locus of control and internal locus of control. External locus of control is where outside forces control your life. Internal locus of control, you make the decision to control your life. External locus of control is when your well-being is heavily influenced and affected by outside forces. If the weather's bad, if the traffic's not If the traffic's bad, if your partner's in a bad mood, then you go as they go. Internal locus of control, my well-being is determined by me, right? Have you ever been in a situation in your life where everything was fucking shitty? Like there were problems, nothing was going your way, and yet sometimes somewhere on the inside you felt like, wow, I'm actually pretty stable. I remember feeling that all the time during the pandemic last year. I was going through a tumultuous part of my business, scared. I also experienced loss with two people that I knew to COVID, lost their lives. But amidst it all, there was a deeper sense of, wow, I can't believe how resilient I am, how creative I'm being, how strong I'm able to show up for other people who are more scared. So you can turn life's worst moments into sources of pride. That's a new level of happiness, guys. And one more distinguishing factor about external locus of control is when the outside world is in chaos, so are you internally. If you are externally oriented, when everything is chaotic outside, then you're going to match that feeling on the inside. But if you have an internal locus of control, when the outside world is in chaos, you are stable. I think back to that situation I was just telling you about with the woman I'm dating. When she was in chaos, bringing her tornado to me, I was stable on the inside. I could hear the hurt that I had caused, and then I felt the line with which she crossed. And we were able to navigate both. And now we're deeper, we're stronger, we're more intimate, and she trusts me more. And she wants to rip my clothes off more. These are all great benefits of being internally locus of control. Because the bottom line is, guys, an external locus of control is a shitty strategy for living your life. Let's just be honest. Training strategy number 2. This was a popular one last night. I call this the space between technique. And it's a guided visualization technique. So if you have a specific situation in your life that happens over and over again where you lose your power, whether it's with your mom, whether it's with one of your significant partners, whether it's, like I say, in traffic. I'm beating a dead horse on these examples. I got to get more creative here. But if you keep finding yourself getting triggered and then responding in a disempowered way, then what you need to do is train in advance for those moments and rewrite your future behaviors. Viktor Frankl was the one who said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Let's do that one again. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, right? Stimulus, you wake up in the morning and you find out that there's an emergency in work. Response, you can get triggered, you can go into anxiety mode, you can get freaked out, and then you do emotional eating or whatever it is, you turn to porn, whatever it is you do, right? Stimulus, and then the response can be disempowering, and they can happen so closely together that they feel conjoined. What Frankl says here is that, no. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is your power to choose an infinite number of different responses. And in that response lies your growth and your freedom to choose to behave differently. So, how do you create a bigger space between stimulus and response so that you can choose that new response? This is where I call the space between visualization technique into practice. And there's 3 steps to it. Step number 1 is to sit down in meditation, close your eyes, and visualize a future trigger point. For me, it would be, I'm going to visualize a situation with my romantic partner where I do something to ignite her storm, her tornado, and she comes at me. And I visualize that, and then I feel into my body my defense mechanisms coming up, the anxiety, the fear, the frustration, the not knowing, the inner critic going wild. I visualize all of that. And then step number 2 is create the space. Create the pause. Slow down that movie that you're visualizing to like half speed or quarter speed. And so instead of just launching back into defensiveness or shutting down internally or creating a wall, instead I slow it down and I just look at it from a different perspective. I don't take any action. And I step back from the inner critic. I step back from the emotion and I say, what would be the most resourceful behavior in this moment? And step number 3 is actually choosing that new response. Okay? I want to be able to tell her where she's right and to meet her and to have her feel felt. But I also want to stand up for my own self and my boundaries. And I do that visualization practice over and over and over again, daily, nightly, whatever, until I feel confident that the next time something like that will happen, that I can create that actual pause moment. So the 3 steps of the visualization technique are, the space between visualization technique are, step 1, visualize a future trigger. Step 2, create that space, that pause. Step 3, choose the new response. All right, let's get into training technique number 3 that I didn't share last night. And this is one that I talked about on a previous podcast episode. I'll link this in the show notes. It was episode number 87 called A Board of Directors for Your Emotions. Now, this is a technique that's perfect for aftermath, like after the fact that you've lost your power. So if a situation has happened recently, or a situation where you lose your cool or you relinquish your power, and you need to kind of go in and do a triage and figure out what happened, or to process it so you don't stay stuck, right, in that shutdown mode or in that explosive mode. This is a visualization technique where you can start to welcome and create space for the emotions that are coming up inside of you. So what you're going to want to do is sit down, close your eyes, and when you're going to want to imagine that you are sitting at the head of a boardroom table, like one of the biggest boardroom tables at the top of some, like penthouse commercial real estate center in New York City, some skyscraper in New York City. Okay, maybe there's like 24 seats, maybe there's 100 seats, however big you want to imagine it. And imagine that in each seat, one of your emotions exists. So each seat is represented by anger, happiness, fear, jealousy, resentment, insecurity, curiosity, on and on and on around the table. And just recognize that each emotion that you feel only occupies one seat. Some of them may be louder than others and have more to say, but you are seated at the head of that table as the chairman of the board of directors for your emotions. You are the one with the gavel. And it's an opportunity for you to say, okay, we are now going to take a look at the situation where I just lost my power. What are the most prevalent emotions that show up at the table? Oh, wow, there you are, jealousy. I call upon you to share your experience, to share your message with me. I'm here to listen. And then jealousy stands up and speaks its piece. What message, what wisdom do you have for me? What do you want me to know? And here's the key thing, guys, because you have the gavel, you're the one who's the director, the chairman. Do not let that emotion filibuster. You give them 60 seconds, give them 5 minutes, whatever it is, to feel the feeling, to see what lessons in store, and then you say thank you. Is there anyone else? Are there any other emotions that would like to make themselves available to share with me the message that you have? This is your opportunity to create the space for those emotions that often get suppressed or often get overlooked because there's a louder emotion that's always chattering or always. There are other emotions that like to whisper. They have deeper messages that can't be heard unless you create the stillness and call upon them. And ultimately, because you are the chairman, you get to decide what to let in and what not. You have control over it. These are situations, and this is a process that most guys never go through, right? And we go from one troubling situation to another, never fully metabolizing what you just went through. So this is the board of directors for your emotions. I'll link the episode number 87, the podcast that I did way back during the pandemic, I believe, the beginning pandemic era. Listen to that one for more detail on it. That is your third technique. So guys, as we're wrapping up this episode, and I'll go into some details around the digital mastermind here in a few moments, you can start to recognize the importance of these tough situations in your life where you may be losing your power. And that if you want to rewrite the narrative, you have to train differently. I gave you 3 different ways in which to do that. Number 1, shifting from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control. I am going to focus on the thoughts and the emotions inside so I don't have to worry about controlling the gazillion environmental factors that I have no influence or control over, so that no matter what life throws at me, I can feel solid on the inside. Training strategy number 2 is the space between guided visualization to help you anticipate those future scenarios, right? You're going to visualize a future trigger, create the space, and then choose the new behavior. And then technique number 3 is those aftermaths where you didn't show up the way that you wanted to. The board of directors for your emotions, guided visualization, is a way for you to go back and process what happened so you can do it better the next time. Now, with all of that said, fellas, the most important investment you can make into training differently is to become part of a community of other guys who are doing the same kind of work. That's why the digital mastermind exists. You can do this lone wolfing thing on your own, personal development on your own, but it's slow, it's shallow, and it's incomplete. One of the things we heard last night from the breakout groups was, holy shit, every time I think I'm the only guy dealing with something on my own, I end up in one of these breakout groups with another guy and he's dealing with the same thing. And we solved it in 3 minutes, whereas it took me 3 months to get to this point. If you want to stop the bullshit of wasting all this time figuring out stuff on your own, the Digital Mastermind is the community where we go through and we accelerate through our lives, stopping drift and living that great man within. So head over to the show notes where you have an opportunity to look at the program, register. On Friday night, February 12th, New York City time, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., we're doing our community kickoff. We're going to have all sorts of awesome exercises for you to meet the men in the community, to forge the relationships, establish an accountability group if you desire, and to begin and actually to continue your work in living that great man within you. I'll see you in the community.